Sul Sul Simp4Sims here. The graphics overhaul project has evolved into something completely new, still fundamentally about improving the values in the file, but now with the added ability to personalize it according to your needs. Introducing SimpsSetters. Enough of that. Setters, what's that? In technical terms, a setter is a variable, which is simply a stored value that can be used, manipulated, and changed at a later time. Think algebra where x equals 1 and y equals 2. Setters open up a new door to personalizing the file that I didn't even know existed a few weeks ago. Using two new files, SimpsSetters.sgr and MySetters.sgr, I created a framework to customize the values that get loaded into the game. SimpsSetters is a list of setters along with default values. MySetters initially will be a blank file ready for your overrides. MySetters will never be updated, so values that are added to it will persist. Graphics rules and SimpsSetters will be updated for calculations and variables respectively. Enough waffling, get to the point. How do I use setters? First, from the Patreon post, download the new files. If a graphics rule file exists already, either rename or delete it before adding the new one. Move the downloaded files to the config override folder. Once the three files are in the config override, go back to the Patreon post. Scroll to the Google spreadsheet link. It's a comprehensive list of all the setters. The first column is the name. The next column shows the type. Then the description column will give a bit of detail. The expected values column lists the appropriate values for each setter. And the last column, quick copy, is the important one. Green cells are the default values. If you don't want to change a value from the default, then ignore that setter. Only add values that you want to override. Let's add a setter. Open the MySetters.sgr file with a text editor. Windows has Notepad and Mac has TextEdit. You can also use something like Notepad++. I personally use Atom on both Windows and Mac. I'm not going to go through all the options in this video because that would take forever. Knowing that around half of you like distance blur on, I'm going to demonstrate how to enable this. Let's find the distance blur setter in the spreadsheet. Distance blur is the autofocus effect in the background, also referred to as DOF or depth of field. It requires ambient occlusion to be enabled as well. Ambient occlusion is the small shadows that you see in the corner of rooms, around doors and window frames, around cabinets and counters, and so on. It's a nice bit of depth, but is buggy at the best of times. Note here that enabling ambient occlusion will have a significant performance toll. So to enable distance blur, we need to also enable ambient occlusion, which means that we're going to use two setters. Copy the cell to enable ambient occlusion. Paste the copied value into MySetters. Copy the cell to enable distance blur. It's important that each setter is on a new line. Hit the enter or return key. Once on a new line, paste the copied value. Distance blur and ambient occlusion are enabled. Add as many setters as you like. Don't forget to save the changes. And remember, green cells are the default values. I want to also mention the config.log file. The Sims4 folder has a file called config.log. The top of the log file reports on the setters used and the values that get loaded. Last thing, the frame rate limit setter requires editing of the options.ini file. This file can also be opened with the text editor. Scroll down to frame rate limit. Add a hash to the start of this line. This makes the game ignore the setting known as commenting out a line of code. Next time the Sims 4 is started, the value is regenerated. A line will be added to the bottom of the file with the value grabbed from the graphics rules. Changing the frame rate limit setter in future will require this process to be repeated. That's all from me for now. Good luck adding setters and happy simming.